Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I will call to order this regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission this Monday, December 14th, 2020, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. And clerk, has the roll been taken?
Yes, and as our new custom is under the current regulations, we have to do roll call vote and ask that commissioners would give their city, county, and the state that they're in. Commissioner Lalonde.
Kristen Lalonde, City, Mount Pleasant, County, Isabella, Country, United States.
Thank
Did I
you.
do that backward?
You covered all the bases.
Okay.
Commissioner Ronan.
Commissioner Ronan is located in the wonderful city where people meet, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, located in Isabella County in the great state of Michigan.
All right, Commissioner Tolis.
Petro Tolis, City of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, State of Michigan.
Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, state of Michigan.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Isabella County, state of Michigan.
Thank you. And Mayor Joseph.
I'm in Mount Pleasant, city of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, and state of Michigan. I think we might have missed Commissioner Alsager.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. Commissioner Alsager.
Mount Pleasant, Isabella, Michigan.
Thank you. All are present and accounted for.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Tonight we have two presentations. Our first presentation is an introduction of recent city employees hired, and we have a video prepared to introduce them.
Robin Liptow was promoted to the position of GIS Specialist on August 7th. Robin has been a great asset to the engineering and public works team since joining the department in 2017. Robin has over 20 years of experience in the civil engineering and surveying fields. Robin came to the city with 6 years of experience as a civil engineering CAD technician at Central Michigan Surveying and Development in Mount Pleasant, and 15 years of experience prior to that as Chief CAD Technician for Lapham Associates in Clare and Gladwin. Robin received an associate's degree in drafting and design from Mid-Michigan Community College. Eric Smith joined the engineering department as an engineering technician on Tuesday, September 8th. Eric comes to us from Stage Right, where he was an applications engineer, and prior to that performed production and quality management, purchasing, estimating, and engineering for Federal Broach and Machine Company. Eric also has experience as a water and sewer inspector with the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority in Charlottesville, Virginia. Eric received an associate's degree in mechanical engineering technology from Ferris State University. Bill Ernst joined the engineering department as an engineering technician on Monday, September 28th. Bill comes to us from Central Michigan Surveying and Development, where he was a senior crew chief and survey department coordinator, and prior to that had experience working as a senior crew chief for Mid-Michigan Engineering and Lapham Associates. Bill comes to the city with over 35 years of experience in the surveying and civil engineering industry. Bill attended Delta College studying mathematics and is a certified survey technician level 3.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Commission, I would like to introduce to you our newest operators at the City of Mount Pleasant Wastewater Treatment Plant. The first comes to us most recently from Leprino Foods, where he performed maintenance work. Prior to that, he was employed by Dow Corning as an operator and at CME Mitsuba as a maintenance engineer. This new operator has extensive experience in machining, automation, and mechanical skills, as well as having a strong background in related disciplines. Please join me in welcoming Robert Frick. Our next recent addition comes to us from Matthews Custom Carpentry, where he performed construction work and prior to that was employed by Gross Farms Incorporated in Robbins Sport Surfacing. This operator received a bachelor's degree in environmental science from Northern Michigan University with a focus in water resources and completed an internship at the Ishpeming wastewater plant. Please welcome Alex Matthews.
Well, I would just like to say a big thank you and welcome to the city of Mount Pleasant for Robin, Eric, Bill, Rob, and Alexander. Welcome to the team, and we look forward to working together. And Nancy, did you have any words for the team?
No, we were all caught up on all of our introductions until we had a hire last week. And so my guess is early in January, we will have one or two more to introduce to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Next on our agenda tonight is a presentation by the Isabella County Restoration House Executive Director, Dee Albright. And Dee is with us tonight. She has been the executive director for maybe a little over a year and a half. And this is her first full season with ICRH. And we're happy to have you with us, Dee.
Thank you. I would correct you. It's not quite a year. I came January last year. And so making my way through the first year here. But thank you for allowing me to make a presentation to the commission. It's an interesting time to run a homeless shelter. We started during the summer reviewing recommendations from HUD and from the CDC as to how we could open and how we could still provide services to the homeless community in Isabella County. And our board has worked very diligently and quickly through some of the process, establishing new policies, new guidelines to ensure that we're following the pandemic guidelines set up for emergency shelter. During the month of August and September, I spent a lot of time talking to the local churches because as a rotational shelter, we our normal schedule is established during early fall, and we spend a week at each church and rotate to the different churches. And knowing that was going to be difficult this year, we started asking them, okay, are you open? Are you still willing to work with us? But during that time, we also shared with them the process that we were implementing to ensure that not just our guests, but our volunteers and our staff were safe, and that we were taking the precautions to ensure that COVID was not going to be entering the shelter. And so some of the steps that we have taken is that each guest is, we take their temperature and we complete a health screen on them every time they come in from leaving the shelter. And all volunteers are asked to do that every time they come to the shelter or the host site. And all staff does that every time they enter. And so we're trying to ensure that we do not have someone come to the shelter with symptoms or with COVID. If someone presents with symptoms, we're working with the Isabella Citizens for Health Clinic, and we have an isolation room. We've rented an additional area attached to the day shelter that serves as our quarantine isolation area. And our guests presenting with symptoms will be housed in that area, and we'll schedule a time for them to go to the clinic to be tested for COVID. They stay in that area until we get the results from the test. And if we're at a church, we can build an isolation area at the church, so we can ensure that we are still keeping them separate from everybody else. We've used this area only once so far this season, and it wasn't because the guest presented with symptoms, but it was a third-party exposure. He went to visit his children, and the children were sent home from school because there was an exposure at the school, and he did test negative, so it wasn't a concern. Now, on the other hand, I have staff that have needed to self-quarantine because they've been exposed. One of them did have present with COVID, and we were able to trace back with the health department, and the only exposure we had from that staff member was a guest that completed intake but was not allowed to stay because of their criminal history. And so there was no further exposure to the rest of the guests or the volunteers during that time. So we're trying to be very careful about exposure and how we are preventing the COVID from entering into the day shelter. With that, we're also asking guests to, excuse me, to remain at the shelter during the day. In years in the past, we opened the day shelter at 1 o'clock, and our guests would leave the night shelter at 8 o'clock in the morning and go to the soup kitchen for breakfast, and then they were on their own until 1 o'clock. But since the soup kitchen is not open and they're just distributing meals, the board decided that we would open at 8 o'clock. And so we've expanded our hours. And we also ask the guests to stay at the shelter. We're limiting what they can leave for. We do allow them to go to the store to shop. I'm limiting that to 1 time a week. They would love to go every day, but I'm not allowing that just due to exposure. And we allow them to take a quick 15-minute walk through the park or around the block or something, just so they aren't stuck at the shelter all day long. We have also worked out with Maury Courts to take them over and let them do, play basketball, volleyball, walk the track over there. And so we're trying to find ways to help them pass the time while they're at the shelter, but they cannot just leave and go visit friends and go visit family and come back. We are limiting that. If anybody tests positive, they cannot stay at the shelter. We're working with 8CAP, and they're using their emergency cares dollars to house guests at a hotel. But so far, we have not had anybody present at the shelter with a positive test. All guests are required, guests, staff, and volunteers are required to wear masks the whole time they are in the shelter. The only time they don't need to wear their mask is when they're eating, when they're on a smoke break, or when they're sleeping. When we go to a night shelter, one of our host sites, we have staff that will do a walkthrough with the host and look at the COVID situation. Can we have the meals at the host site and be able to socially distance, or do we need to do a rotational schedule for the meals? Is there room for them to sleep and do meals, or can we only do sleeping at the host site? The site that we're at now, we're only sleeping. So the meals are done at the day shelter, and then they leave later in the evening to go to the host site because they only have room to socially distance for the evening. We can't do the meals and socially distance all the cuts. I'm looking through my notes, I'm sorry. All guests, like I said, or all volunteers have to complete a special training related to COVID, and a lot of that covers how we disinfect and how we are screening the guests and the guidelines for making sure that things are sanitized at the shelter. Throughout the day, we do go through and sanitize everything at the shelter, the eating area, the kitchen, the restrooms, the doorknobs, everything. We have a UV light that we can use for sanitation. And when we are at a host site for the evening, one of our guests, another thing that we've done is we've added staff, knowing that we wouldn't have as many volunteers. A lot of our volunteers are in the high risk age category. And many of them have already told us early in the season that they would not be able to volunteer because they are at risk. The other group of volunteers that we rely heavily on is students. And since CMU changed their semester timing, and we have about 2 months with no students around, we decided we would add staff. And so we went from a staff of about 4 to a staff of 13. So we are staffed 24/7 and have staff available at all times, which limits our need for volunteers. We still rely heavily on volunteers, but it makes it easier if we have a time period when there are no volunteers. And so our staff, we have in the mornings, we have a time period where we have 2 staff available that can help assist with waking up all the guests, making sure they're on the bus. And then 1 staff stays at the host site and will sanitize the host site so that the churches can feel free to use their facility during the day and not worry about, what if we brought in and everything. It all is completely sanitized every morning. And our equipment is sanitized. We're watching very carefully the bedding and making sure that everything is washed and sanitized on a weekly basis. We have a set of them that sits and rests for a period of time while the rest are being used, just trying to follow all the guidelines for sanitation. And I'd be honest with you, I don't have a complete schedule. Usually we have a complete schedule established in September so that we can distribute it to the police department, the health department, the iRide, and everybody so they know what we're doing. But we don't have a complete schedule. And so that means that I'm talking with churches on a weekly basis, trying to determine, are they open? Are they going to be able to house us? How do we need to adjust? Do we need to have meals at the day shelter? We did receive permission from the city to house the guests at our day shelter in an emergency. Mostly concerned that if there was a shelter in place order, what would we do? Rather than last spring, we housed them in a hotel for 3 weeks and then they were on their own. But that shelter in place order lasted more than 3 weeks. And at the start of our season, I didn't want to look at the cost of needing to house everybody. And part of the concern I had was no one is working with them on their self-sufficiency plan and no one is supervising them. And so in a hotel, they could pretty well do what they want. And so not wanting to have that in an emergency situation, we did work with the city and we were granted temporary permission to house our guests at the day shelter overnight in an emergency. And so when a church is closed and they tell me they cannot have us at their facility, then we move them to the day shelter. So we are keeping our numbers down. We're trying to limit the capacity that we have because we need to adjust with what the church may have or what is available at the day shelter. But so far in the first month and a half of being open, we opened November 1st. And in the first month and a half of being open, we have served 57 individuals. And 13 so far we have had to turn away. Those numbers are increasing daily. We are getting more calls, but we are at capacity for men. We cannot take any more men in at this time. We had 2 guests that were short-term, just needed a couple nights while they were waiting to get a bus and move out of state. We have had 7 individuals decide not to stay once they hear our rules. They don't want to live by the rules and they decide it's too much, so they walk out. We've had 2 individuals that we would not allow stay because of their criminal history. And 1 individual was with us for about a week, and then we went to Maury Courts for a time of relaxation, and they walked away and never came back. We have 7 individuals that have found other housing at this time. Right now, we do not have any families, which is a little bit different. It's helpful because we have had to stay at the shelter and everybody's all in one room. We have hung tarps so that the women have a closed off area and the men have a closed off area. But we had one family with 5 children that was here early on, and they found other housing. We had one family last week we were talking to that one of the churches had put up in a hotel, and they did not want to come in. They wanted to continue staying at the hotel, and the church was like, you know, we're done. They have an opening for you. And they chose to stay in their car. We had another family with a man with 2 children came in. And as we went through the rules, he decided that he did not want to stay there, so he left. And so we have 3 families. One of them found other housing, and the other 2 just decided they did not want to stay. So that is pretty well my report.
Thank you, Dee. I just want to say, as a board member of ICRH, Dee stepped in last year, mid-season, and then the pandemic has really shaped her tenure with ICRH, with all the challenges that have come with it. And so she's done an outstanding job. This year has been difficult for many people, and I think Dee has seen a lot of that for many families and many individuals. And so I'd just like to thank you for your service. You're doing a great job for a lot of families and individuals in need in our community. And thank you for being here. I just want to ask one question for community members who want to help out either by maybe donating or volunteering. How would they do that?
Volunteers, and we desperately need volunteers during this time, especially over the holidays. Volunteers can sign up. We ask that they first go to our website. It's icrhouse.org. And under the tab, Your Help, there is a pop-up that says volunteers, and the application is on the website. And we ask you to start there because we have to do a background screening on all volunteers. And so that is the first step. And once you receive an email stating that you have cleared the background, then you're sent a link to our Sign Up Genius with the open slots and times for people to volunteer. And so, yes, we desperately need volunteers at this time. And volunteer jobs can consist of anything from helping to serve the meals to sitting and playing card games with the guests, just visiting with the guests, help us clean and disinfect. It can be a lot of things, but we definitely could use volunteers helping us during this time. As far as donations, we never turn away money. That's always welcome. And that can be done either on our website or donation mailed to the day shelter at 120 South Pine. Any other donations, there's a few things that we don't accept. We ask that people pass them on to agencies that we work with. Things such as canned goods, anything that has to be cooked. We don't have a kitchen. We have a kitchen area, but we don't have stove or anything like that. And so we don't have the capability to cook. The soup kitchen is bringing lunches over for our guests, and the churches still provide our evening meal. So anything along the line of canned goods or anything that has to be cooked, we cannot accept. And clothing, we don't accept. We don't have the capacity to store clothes. And so we ask people to donate any clothing to Clothing Inc. And we work with them very closely to meet the needs of our guests. And again, our guests don't have the ability to store a lot of items. And we limit them to one large tote, and that's all they can keep of their own. And so, while they're at the shelter, all their needs as far as shampoo, body wash, any care products, those are all taken care of. We have a stock of those right now. And so those are the types of things that we don't really need donations for. The thing that we go through quickly is milk and juice. And those are things that we aren't used to needing to supply, but we feed breakfast now. We also go through the non-latex gloves very quickly. And sanitizing products are things that we are going through very quickly as well.
Thanks, Dee. I think Commissioner Elsager had a question.
Well, Dee, I mostly wanted to thank you for taking on this job, and especially with all the challenges that have come upon you with the pandemic. Just thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Dee? Okay. Well, Dee, thank you again for being with us tonight, and hopefully we'll see you in the community and helping out with ICRH. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Okay. Next on our agenda tonight, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, I would just like to ask that item number 20, the appointments, be taken on separately.
I'm sorry.
Agenda item 20
Right.
for the appointments, to take them on separately. Because they're not reappointments, they are appointments for new people to be added. They're not the reappointments like we did 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
I understand now. I think that's more of an appropriate motion when we get to item number 20.
Okay. I just wanted to make it clear.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillis. Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so we will move on to public input on agenda items. And at this time, if you're a member of the public and you're with us by Zoom, you can go to the participants and hit the raise hand button, which should be in the bottom right-hand corner, and I will recognize you for public comment. We just ask that you state your name and your address, as well as if you're here with us by phone, you can hit *9 and that will raise your hand as well. And so for our first public comment, we have Michael Comorn, I believe is how that's said. I'm not sure. And
Mr. Comorn, there you go. If you unmute, you can talk now.
Thank you very much. I'm the attorney for the facility owned by the Carries, Deborah and Caleb Carey. And I didn't know if this is the appropriate time and place, but I know there's a report that's supposed to be submitted. It's item number 18. I was told because it's an agenda item, I can address it briefly. If I'm not out of position, may I do so?
yeah, this is fine. This is the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to get into the issues that, maybe for another discussion or for the litigation that's pending, but the recommendation is, I would ask the council here to consider these factors because there's something that is seemingly can't be reconciled. And obviously within the report, there's raves for the performance of my clients since they've been open and operating as a medical marijuana facility. I don't think that should be overlooked within this report. But the proposed amendment seems to eliminate this requirement of getting the recreational license locally within a certain period of time. And I know that that was part of the ordinance, and that's going to be amended or removed so that's no longer a requirement. But it seems to go against the grain of what the principles of the selection process were, which were to find facilities that were open and operating and currently existing facilities. And this suggestion now that it be removed in its entirety and not have that requirement seems to go against the entire grain of what the principles were of that particular ordinance. I just see there's a real conflict in all of a sudden removing any of the requirements to perform with some expediency to not require that anymore. And I do take issue with the way that it's reported that it's too difficult to operate or get the state approval within 30 days or even 60 days because what the state will do if you're already operating and have a medical license and are opening a facility and operating, they will fast track you and move you to the front of the line and facilitate that faster. So I just felt like the representations here did not, and I can say that from representing other people, once they've been approved for, you know, the main thing is getting your facility approved once you've been pre-qualified. That exists here. And I don't think that, you know, I mean, as part of the selection process, looked at who would be open, you know, soon, and certainly expected to follow that 30-day requirement. And now to just remove it after that was one of the variables that was utilized and considered in the selection process seems to be patently unfair. So I would either suggest you keep it in there and find that the others that aren't in compliance with the ordinance that was written at the time, action be taken relative to their temporary approvals, or recognize that there are facilities that are open and could have complied. I would suggest that the carriers would have had their state approval by now, you know, even a month after the temporary ones were submitted in November. And the other thing, which I think is kind of important that I don't know if it was thought about, the state law itself, the state law, the recreational proclamation. And I'll finish. I appreciate your time. I don't mean to go on too much. I see everybody. But very clearly within that ordinance, within the state law, says that the ordinance that the cities create cannot prohibit those facilities that are operating under the MMFLA from utilizing that license, utilizing a recreational license. The state statute prohibits excluding medical marijuana operators from obtaining a recreational. And I would recommend that if there's going to be an amendment to any of this, that be considered just to be consistent with how the state law is written. And I can read you the exact language if necessary. I know you probably all have at some point addressed it, but it's very clear that the intent, in fact, this has been successfully litigated in Kalamazoo recently. They had opted out, they'd even opted out for recreational after providing a medical, and the lawsuit was filed compelling them to opt in for that one operator. Now, later on, they opted in and they gave out licenses, but the statute's very clear on that. And I just, with all things considered, I mean, the positive comments from my clients, this issue that the one thing that comes to light today on the agenda to amend the statute, instead of dealing with the operators that have been there for a year or two and probably paved the way for, if there had been 1,000 complaints by any of these operators, I'm sure the city's position would have been a little bit different regarding moving forward with a recreational. That can't be said because, I mean, no complaints make for a good perception of the industry. So I'd ask you to consider that. And if you're really looking at amending the recreational, please take a look at this ordinance, the state law that requires that says you cannot prohibit those medical marijuana people from getting a recreational. Thank you. I see that probably gone past my time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Right. Just like to thank you, Mr. Comorn. Next, we have Caleb Carey.
Hello?
Hi, Caleb. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Caleb Carey, 214 South Pine Street, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. As you are all aware, I am a co-owner of Consano, the Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center on Michigan Street. I believe you all received a letter from my mother explaining how rec is very important for the viability of our business, and that we were hoping that the commission would consider amending to allow medical licenses to have rec licenses. And I've honestly, frankly, through the correspondence past, I don't know, this would be about the third meeting I spoke since late August. We've been kind of stonewalled by the city as far as consideration. And yet now the city planner is planning to amend the ordinance to allow the applicants essentially their license to be granted without following the rules of the ordinance. I mean, the other med place that ended up getting the rec license, they're fully rec licensed. So it's not like a timeline that is not feasible. The selection committee just chose applicants, or one with the 2 empty lots, especially. They granted these applicants conditional authorization when they could not do it. And these are sophisticated businesses. They read the ordinance. If they had an issue, they should have went through the timeline, changed the ordinance. It got bumped back because of COVID. There was definitely ample opportunity. So I just feel like the city isn't trying to support an already existing business with local ties and trying to say this other company doesn't have to play by the rules. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Next, we have James McBride.
Mr. Mayor, with your leave, would I be able to, well, first of all, James McBride, 2130 Flagstone Court, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Would it be possible to let Jerome Schwinn speak before me?
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Schwinn.
Hello, my name is Jerome Schwinn. My address is 1280 Queensway, Lake Isabella. I'm the chair of the Middle Michigan Development Corporation Board and president of Isabella Bank. Thank you for your consideration tonight of agenda item 17. As you know, the MMDC strives to bring value to the economic development of the city of Mount Pleasant and its surrounding area. I'm very proud of the work that's being done by the MMDC team and am certain of the high value to the city residents and businesses for the investment. For example, in 2020 alone, the MMDC directly facilitated the issuing of grants to business owners of the city of Mount Pleasant, totaling more than $800,000. These grant funds made it possible for local businesses to keep their doors open, continue to pay their employees, and keep Mount Pleasant vibrant. The MMDC has appreciated the Economic Development Partnership through an annual investment of the city of Mount Pleasant for many years. The city's investment greatly assists the MMDC's ability to bring economic development services to Mount Pleasant. The amount of that investment has been unchanged since 2010. Jim McBride and I met recently with Nancy Ridley to discuss an increase in the investment amount to reflect the same level of support as 10 years ago, adjusted for inflation. So respectfully, we therefore propose a 3-year contract with built-in step-up, for which we appreciate your consideration tonight. Thank you so much. I think Jim has further comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay to proceed then, Mr. Mayor? Thank you. So as Jerome mentioned, a little over $800,000 in business grants this year. Let me detail that for you. $48,000 was the match on main grants that the city had requested us to apply on your behalf. That was 22 businesses in downtown Mount Pleasant. $56,000 from the Michigan Small Business Relief Grants, $590,000 from the Michigan Small Business Restart Grants, that was the most recent, and $99,638 was the broadband grant for the CMURC site readiness proposal. So that's all finished and done. And then there was another $11,000 made available to us by Dow Chemical and Chemical Bank to provide additional relief based on the Small Business Relief Program to go further down the list and hit some of the companies we were not able to get to. So it adds up to $804,638 just this year. If you go back a couple of years, you look at a 3-year, it's $1,194,638 just within the city limits of Mount Pleasant. The other thing I'll mention is that we also did 3 low interest loans at $50,000 each. Mountain Town, Hunter Properties, Cheryl Hunter, that includes the Wayside and so on, and O'Kelly's, and then the Comfort Inn Conference Center. Each received one of these loans at 0.25% interest, 10-year payback. So that's not included in these grant totals. So that's an additional assistance we provided. This year, I'll also mention that a very different kind of a year for us. Many of our meetings, just like this, had to be Zoom calls or online, or we use Blue Jeans instead of Zoom sometimes. But we had a number of company visits within the city of 218 calls. Now, many of these were related to assisting these companies with their filling out of their paperwork for the grants, and many companies that we've never really called on before in the process of helping businesses through these difficult times. The other thing I want to mention is we're very happy that we have some pretty good investment numbers to report to you that just this year, and this is really due to just a couple of companies, but a little over $21 million invested in 2020. Most of that is American Mitsuba, a little over 19 million, just one company, but a pretty healthy investment by J. Rank Electric at $1.7 million as well. So that's in a really tough year. We've had that kind of investment that we've encouraged. So just wanted to give you an overview. These are some of the things we do under the contract. And so as Jerome said, we really would appreciate renewal of the contract when that comes up on item number 17. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. Nancy, did we have any emailed comments to the commission on agenda items?
No, Mayor, we did not.
Okay. I don't see any more hands up in our attendees. So at this time, I will close the public input section on agenda items for the evening, and we will move on to our receipt of petitions and communications. Manager Ridley.
Yes, on this section of the agenda tonight, you have the report on pending items, and attached to that is the monthly report on citizen complaints received, as well as the year-end report that was provided by Director Loria on the work with some of our local groups regarding the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group and the Human Rights Committee, and some of the initiatives that we've done with those groups. So his annual report is included for your review. Also in this section of the agenda, we have the minutes from May 2019 of the Principal Shopping District, the July minutes of the Tax Increment Finance Authority, October minutes of Parks and Recreation Commission, November minutes of the Planning Commission. And then as referenced during your public comment, we received a communication from Deb Carey on behalf of Consano, and attached to that communication were various informal petitions regarding recreational marijuana and medical marijuana businesses that she provided as well. And this came in after the packet was distributed, so I sent it out to all of the commissioners electronically, so I believe you have that. So those are the items we have under petitions and communications.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. And I would just like to say to Director Loria that I really appreciated his report, and it was exciting to see the collaboration with RISE in dealing with victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And as always, his work with the Human Rights Committee and the Diversity Group has been really appreciated, I think, by the commission. So with that, we have our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are those with an asterisk next to them. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent calendar? Seeing none, then Manager Ridley, would you like to go through the consent calendar?
Yes, we're recommending the following: the approval of the minutes of both your regular meeting and your closed session of November 23rd. We have 2 bids for you this evening. The first is for our annual bid for wastewater treatment chemicals to lock in the price for the year. And we're recommending you approve the low qualified bid for ferrous chloride from PVS at $422 per dry ton. The second bid is for the sidewalk snow clearing around the downtown city-owned parking lots. And as you'll recall, earlier in November, we mentioned to you that the contractor that we had previously used to clear those sidewalks with Principal Shopping District funding informed us that he would not be available to do that work this year. So we did complete the bid document and send it out to various companies who provide those services in the Mount Pleasant area. And only one bid was received, and that was from Green Scene Landscaping. And that bid allows for a cost of $600 per snow clearing event and $700 per salting event, but it includes a not to exceed cost for the entire 2020-2021 snow season of not to exceed $40,000. And you'll recall we expected that the bids would be higher due to the lateness in the year of sending this bid out and the likely low costs that we had been experiencing for a number of years from the previous contractor. And at the end of this year, we will be able to review the bid documents and review the process with the new contractor and be able to send that bid out much earlier next year, probably in the late spring. But in the meantime, we're quite confident that Green Scene will be able to complete the work, and there's adequate funds in the Principal Shopping District fund balance to be able to cover that contract. The Principal Shopping District Board did meet last Thursday, and they're recommending award of the contract, and therefore we're recommending it to you this evening. In the rates, fees, and charges part of the agenda, we had some rates and fees recommended in the proposed budget. And this is based on the fee policy guidelines that we have in place. And we reviewed the water service fees this year and recommended some adjustments to many of those fees in the water service area. And then we're also recommending the annual adjustments to the water and sewer demand fees. I would point out that the increase in the water and sewer demand fees for a typical residential household will result in an increase of 75 cents per month under that fee structure. So we are recommending approval of the 3 resolutions as presented, which are consistent with what was in the operating budget. This is also the time of the year where we amend the current year operating budget to update it with current information that we know about our projection of revenues and expenses for the current year. And the memo from Assistant Finance Director Chris Saladin provides quite a bit of detail about the changes to each fund since the last amendment that you approved. The most significant change is in the general fund, and from a bottom line perspective, we expect that we will be adding approximately $1 million to the unassigned fund balance by the end of this year. And that change is the result of 2 primary things that I would highlight. The first is numerous grants that we received at the city for COVID-related activity. Some of those grants provide funding for specific activity that we weren't anticipating to have for the year, and some of them covered activity we did have, but it became more COVID-related, so it freed up other revenue sources to be able to be used on other things or to be saved for the future. And we also had a significant reduction in expenses due to less events and activities and a reduction in all of our travel and training for the year. So we're recommending the resolution as presented. The next item is an interlocal agreement for indicating who our backup assessor would be. And this is a new item that we have never dealt with before because it's the result of a 2018 law that was passed that now requires each municipality to have an indication as to who the backup assessor would be in the event that the annual audit of the assessing function were to have a failure in it, or if there were a vacancy that exists. So we're recommending that the Isabella County Equalization Director, Pete Preston of Preston Community Services, serve that role, as many townships in our county are also doing. So the interlocal agreement in your packet has been reviewed by the city attorney, and we're recommending you authorize the mayor to sign it. The next item is the extension of the farming contract with Mr. Urban for a portion of the Mount Pleasant Center land. Mr. Urban has farmed this land for a long time before the city even owned it. and pays a leasing fee in order to be able to do that. And so we're recommending you authorize the mayor and clerk to sign another 1-year extension of that farming contract. And then the second to last item on the consent calendar is the city charter requires that you set the date and time of the first meeting of the new year. So we're recommending you take action tonight to set the first meeting of 2021 to be January 11th at 7 o'clock to keep consistent with what has typically been our standard schedule of the second and fourth Mondays of each month, which the public is familiar with. And then lastly on the consent calendar is the approval of payrolls and warrants.
Okay. Thank you, Manager Ridley. Entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented. Commissioner Alsager. Mary, you're muted. Sorry.
I move to accept the consent calendar as presented.
Commissioner Gillis.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I think we, oh, sorry, Commissioner Tolis.
Yeah, I had one question, Mayor. On 11B, Nancy, where did the $40,000 figure arrive from?
When Greenstein submitted their bid, they gave us two options. They gave us the option of either paying on a per event basis or an option of just a flat amount for the entire year. And since they were the only bidder, we went back to talk to them about those two options and asked them if they would be willing to meld the two options together so that we could do a per event basis in the event that it was a lighter year and maybe would not have to spend all of that amount of money, but with the guarantee that we wouldn't exceed the $40,000, and they were willing to do that for us.
So it's not a per event, it's a flat bid of the 40, not to exceed 40,000?
No, what they've agreed to do, if you approve it tonight, is bill us on a per event basis, but with a guarantee that it would not exceed $40,000 for the snow season.
Okay, because I'm looking at, even on a heavy season, you're looking at an average of 13 snowfall events and 17 saltings. And if you calculate that out, that's about $19,700. So we got a figure of double the figure of that, which would be on the high side for a snow season. And I think we're probably 10 grand or under before with Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, our contract with Mr. Curtis, which he hadn't changed in a number of years, was actually $6,900, and it was a flat amount regardless of the amount of times he had to clear or salt. So that was quite a good contract we had for a number of years. But you're right, under this contract with Greenstein, if we have a typical year with the numbers you mentioned about the 13 and the 17, that's all we would spend is the $19,700 that you mentioned. We would not pay the full $40,000. It would just be on a per event basis, and we would only pay that amount that you calculated.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I have one other question. On the salting events, it looks like they're at the discretion of the city downtown development director or the street department supervisor. How is that exactly going to work? If you have a snow event, let's say 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, are we going to wait till the next morning at 8 or 9 a.m. to be contacted by the director or the street department supervisor?
I think that the downtown development director and the street supervisor will work out that process with Greenstein to determine the best way to make those determinations and to do that communication. Since this is a new process where we haven't had to do that before, they will be sitting down and talking through the best way to deal with those middle of the night circumstances.
Okay, I like to see that get worked out, you know, probably with a street supervisor, that if they're going to have an early event, that once they clean it, they salt it, because by the time you wait till 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, that's all iced over. So there's no pre-salting service. It should be done sometime in the AM when they're providing the snow plowing service. That's the only two comments I had on that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, seeing none, we can go to a roll call vote on approving the consent calendar as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Okay. All right, great. First on our agenda tonight is a public hearing on the Michigan Community Development Block Grant, or the CDBG, on the Revolving Loan Fund Program application for Green Tree Cooperative. And then we will consider a resolution after the public hearing. If you're with us here by Zoom, you can hit the participants button at the bottom of your screen and then the raise hand in the bottom right corner. Or if you are with us by phone, you can hit *9 to do the same. And I just ask people who talk to state your name and your address. Manager Ridley, did we have any emailed comments on this public hearing?
No, Mayor, there are no email comments.
All right, I'll just wait a second to see if we get any hands up. Does not look like we have any hands up for the public hearing. So at this time, I will close the public hearing on this item. And
Mayor, you muted yourself.
I'm sorry. So I will close the public hearing at this time. And I guess, we can start our discussion on the resolution. And I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Yes, I move to approve the resolution regarding the public hearing on the Green Tree Cooperative Grocery Inc. Community Development Block Grant Revolving Loan Fund application as presented.
Okay, and Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on this item? Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, I have a couple questions. I don't know if there'll be someone here to address those. The loan of $320,000 from this community development block grant, do you have any idea of the repayment term time for that, and when that will be paid back, so then that will open up to other businesses?
Mayor, if you're okay, I will ask Mary Ann to see if she has the information to be able to answer that question, because she was on the Revolving Loan Fund Committee that reviewed the loan request and approved the loan. So if you're okay, I'll ask her to address that.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. The loan is 120 months, which would be 10 years.
Okay. And is there a percentage interest rate on that, or is that 0%?
Find that here. %6 interest.
Okay, of $320,000 on a 10-year term limit.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary Ann. And I have one more question, if you would, please. In the write-up by Bill Merdeza, it said that Green Tree has committed that 51% of those jobs would be filled by low to moderate income employees. So my question is the other 49% of those jobs that are created, because supposedly this is going to help, this was tied into creating jobs, and they've stated they're going to create 10 new jobs. So if 51% of the jobs are low to moderate income employees, does that mean 49% is moderate to high income? Or I was just kind of getting an idea of if they're giving a living wage. Because what would the other 49%? It just kind of struck me as kind of odd to write that as 51% of the jobs would be filled by low to moderate income employees.
That's a requirement of HUD. That's the minimum that they can do. So they can do more than that if they choose, and they didn't indicate what they plan, but they do plan to meet that minimum threshold, which needs to be met to have it be qualified for this program and to defederalize the dollars.
Okay. And yes, and that is one of the good things about this is that after it's paid back, it'll be 10 years before we get it paid back, but then it's defederalized so that there won't be as many restrictions and policy that you have to commit to. So. But so they're not saying anything about the other 49%. That doesn't mean that 49% is going to be higher than low to moderate income. It just says 51% has to. So it's more of a lower income employees, not that they're providing for. Is that why it's in there?
That's a HUD requirement that has to go to low to moderate income to meet the requirements.
Okay. Okay.
And Marianne, on the payback, do we have to wait the full 10 years when the whole loan is paid back before the funds are defederalized?
No, once they meet once they meet the job thresholds, we would start being able to defederalize it.
So as soon as they certify the job thresholds of the number of jobs created and meeting that threshold, then those payments can become defederalized? Okay.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Yeah.
Commissioner Toles.
Thank you. Again, I will not be supporting this tonight. And the major reason for this project's already started, and now we're looking for a $320,000 loan for equipment and inventory. I mean, this is definitely poor planning, number one. Number two, I've looked at the rent schedule, these loans that have to be paid back, and what they have to take being a grocery store per square footage on the amount. And this looks like it's going to have to be about $8,900 a month gross. And I just don't think they can do it. It's my opinion on it. This is very poor planning. And I can't believe this building's already started and we're looking for more funding right now. This is ridiculous.
I just wanted to say that I will be supporting this project. I know that certain parts of this project from the get-go have been somewhat controversial and had been a source of debate amongst this commission. But I do see that in the long term that these funds that we've been trying to use as loan funds for our downtown businesses, I think in the long term will have beneficial effects. And then as a result of this loan, other businesses in the future in our downtown will be able to utilize loan funds with less restrictions. And so I think no matter what you think about the project itself, that the long-term implications sort of outweigh the risk in my eyes, at least. And so that's why I'll be supporting this, not only because I believe in this project, but I believe in the ability of our downtown to utilize these funds down the road, and that will be helpful. So I don't see any other hands up, and so at this time, I think it's appropriate. We can have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
No.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That passes 6-1.
Okay. All right, on item number 13 is to consider a resolution approving the final 2021 operating budget and to set the millage rate for 2021. This is obviously something we've been discussing over the last several months. Manager Ridley, did you have any overview or brief comments before we start?
The only brief comments I would say, Mayor, is that as you indicated, we've been talking about it in work session, and during those discussions, there did not seem to be any general agreement to make any changes to the proposed budget. So the resolution before you tonight matches the detailed budget that was provided to you earlier this fall. And is by way of a reminder for the general fund overview of it, it reflects the possible addition of approximately $85,000 to the unassigned fund balance based on all of the assumptions that are made in that budget. But as we indicated, there's a number of things that we will have much better information on next year once we start to see what the economy does to our property values and to state shared revenue. The resolution would set the millage rate at 16.25 mils next year, which is the same millage rate, by the way, that the city has had since 2014. But you will note in the resolution that it does include a provision for the commission to review that millage rate in the spring to determine if that rate should be changed before the tax bills are actually sent out in May. So we recommend you approve the resolution as presented.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. Commissioner Tolis?
I'm sorry, I had that on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't turn it off. There we go.
Commissioner Elsager?
I move to approve the resolution for the 2021 operating budget as presented.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget. Any discussion? I'd just like to thank the commission and the staff's work. It's been a long time coming for this budget, as it is every year. I know there's a lot of uncertainties. And so, next year may include some amendments, more so than we usually expect because of some of those uncertainties. But I'd just like to thank the work of staff and the commission together to come up with this budget that I think is a realistic reflection of our expectations. Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, thank you. I've had concerns with this budget as I have in previous years as a city commissioner. Usually there has been changes to budgets over the discussions before the approval. This year, there's been no changes to any numbers within this budget. I do want to thank Marianne Cornexel and Chris Saladine for doing so much work on the budget as they do every year, and the staff's input on their departments. But I have expressed my concerns and frustrations with some of the budget amendments and line items, and unfortunately have not been able to convince my fellow commissioners to look at those numbers, I guess, what we were promised. For a few of the concerns that I have with this budget, just for our community members that may be watching. We had decided to take $236,000 from the Economic Initiative Fund to pay for the demolition of the Mount Pleasant Center. And we were supposed to be replenishing that money back into that Economic Initiative Fund. With this budget, the majority of the city commission has decided not to do that and to put it in the general fund unassigned balances. When I decided and voted on this movement of money, I assumed that that would be replenished to the bucket of money it came from. I do have concerns that it's not being replenished. I was told during these work sessions that we have the ability to move money from fund to fund at our discretion. But the problem is a lot of times the money isn't moved back when it's promised to be replenished in those funds. Future city commissioners may not even remember that we took $236,000 from that fund to use for the demolition of the Mount Pleasant Center. So my concerns with that fell on deaf ears, unfortunately, and so that still is being done. Along with our Borden building bonds, that when this all happened back in 2004, 2005, and we went down the rabbit hole of redoing the Borden building, and parcel B was supposed to have some development there on that. And of course, the tax capture from that parcel was supposed to help on paying for the funding. That did not happen for 15 years. And now we are still taking in this budget the possibility of borrowing $60,000 from the General Fund Economic Initiative Fund for that debt service, because we cannot be guaranteed to receive taxes on parcel B. We've already given them an abatement of 50%, so we've already diminished our return on taxes for parcel B that the community invested in 15 years ago. So we are still taking even more money from that Economic Initiative Fund that was supposed to be going there because we can't seem to get our Borden debt down. All of us have that on our tax statements. We are still paying for the Borden building, and unfortunately, none of the money is shifted around to alleviate some of our debt on our tax rolls. My concern also was that we take taxpayer money and we put it in the TIFA, the Downtown Finance Authority, and that's scheduled for $40,000 for marketing or whatever the TIFA board comes up to where they want to allocate that $40,000 of taxpayer money. I have some concerns of continuously giving money to the bucket for downtown merchants. We have merchants that are struggling everywhere. I know there was a capture for a time being, but I don't think it is our job or taxpayers' responsibility of a whole to market the downtown or to do the marketing for those businesses. I think there should be some other form of them doing their own marketing and their own billboards along US 127. And unfortunately, this has been a line item that I have dealt with for 5 years of being a city commissioner, and that is our payments to Mid-Michigan Development Corporation and Jim Mcbride. And as I have said every single time, I think this is a duplication of services. We have Bill Merdeza as our Director of Economic Development, and we pay him a very good salary. And we also have our Downtown Development Director that we pay a very good salary. And we also provide Mmdc, Jim Mcbride's organization. In this budget, we've allocated $22,500 to go to Mmdc. And in this budget, a few line items down in this agenda, we are going to actually change that line item that we're approving now and giving him an increase of $1,500 on that payment, and along with a contract that we're going to extend with a $2,000 raise for a 3-year contract. That was never discussed at the work session. 3 weeks ago, when we had a work session on this budget, we had a conversation about MMDC and the contract and the amount of money of $22,500. And nothing was said at that time about raising that contract amount for this year. Nothing during that work session was talked about raising it in the 2nd year of that contract or the 3rd year. So it definitely was not transparent at the work session when we all were together and discussing those payments to MMDC. And also we have a finance authority for the Smart Zone who also used to capture up till this year a portion of their taxes. And part of that capture also is paid to Jim Mcbride and MMDC. So another portion of taxpayer money is also floated to MMDC, along with the capture LDFA that pays some of the CEO, Erin Strangs, at the Smart Zone. She is the CEO of that Smart Zone enterprise. And one last thing, we also have a DDA that captures our tax, the business taxes along Mission, to then take from that bucket of money and decide how they're going to spend it for economic initiatives and economic growth. So as you see, we have lots of different people doing the same job, all collecting a lot of taxpayer money. And I want you just to realize that we should be trying to downsize on our duplication of services. Do we need to have that many people doing all the same things or overlapping and paying out this kind of money? MMDC does not have money of their own. They are a middleman to pass from our state to our city. So they have formed a nonprofit so they could collect monies from the state and then be the middleman for disbursement. So every year, and there were previous city commissioners that also felt the duplication of services should be looked at. Unfortunately, we do not have enough people that kind of want to take an analysis of that to see what we could eliminate. I have eliminated one small pocket where Bill Merdeza and Jim Mcbride were doing the exact same thing and both getting paid for that activity, and was able to reduce. But so I have a lot of concerns with this budget. I'm very dismayed that at the work session at our last city commission meeting, there was nothing saying that we were going to inflate the amount of money that we were going to give MMDC. And in no time were we told as city commissioners that the 3-year contract would also include a $2,000 increase. That's going to be talked about in a few items. But during these economic times, I don't think that is prudent or wise with tax dollars. So I will not be supporting this budget this evening. I do want to reemphasize that I want to thank Marianne Cornexel and Chris Saladine for all their hard work on the budget. I appreciate them, and this is to be no effect on their jobs and the outstanding employees they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillis. I just wanted to address a couple of the things that Commissioner Gillis brought up because I think they're important for clarification for the commission and the public. I want to say in Commissioner or Manager Ridley, correct me if I'm wrong and feel free to step in, but I believe the $22,500 contract with MMDC and the other contract that was mentioned with the CMU Smart Zone, that's an LDFA expense, and the City Commission doesn't really have, I would say we approve the LDFA budget, but the LDFA is free to spend those monies as they see fit. And is that correct? I know
Yeah, the LDFA certainly has the contracting authority to enter into the contracts for whatever services they believe are most appropriate with the LDFA dollars. But the city commission does have approval of the budget amount. So the total amount that the LDFA can spend is approved by the city commission, but the specifics of who and how they contract with it are left to their discretion. They've typically provided you with that information of what they intend to do so that you know that. But at the end of the day, they have the authority to determine how to spend the money once the budget is approved.
Thank you. And I think these are two different contracts that we're discussing tonight. In the budget that has been presented, the $22,500, that is direct, that's the LDFA contract that Commissioner Gill has presented.
No, the $22,500 is from the general fund. And the amount from the LDFA contract in the current year, 2020, is $33,500. But for next year, for 2021, it's proposed to decrease to $22,800.
Okay.
So all the numbers are very similar, so it's easy to get confused by them.
Okay. But there are two separate contracts, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I just wanted to highlight that the Borden building, that debt is due to be paid off by when? I know that was the question that came up before.
I think it's in 2022 is when the debt is paid off.
Okay. And the DDA is a tax increment finance group that we've created in the city, and they're centered on mostly infrastructure projects on the Mission Street corridor, correct?
They do both infrastructure and they do economic incentive type projects for businesses along the corridor. For instance, they've done some decorative fencing and some driveway closures, some facade renderings, those types of things. So it's any economic development activity along the Mission Pickard corridor.
Okay. From the report that I think was given to us in the packet, I think that sort of activity is separate from what we're expecting from MMDC. And so I do take issue with that, the characterization that it's overlapping activities, because I think although they do both serve to be, to serve the economic interest of the city and to improve taxable value and the attractiveness of our commercial properties, and the viability of those commercial properties, that I think they do serve separate functions. And so I do want to make that point. And I know Commissioner Gillis also brought up the Economic Initiatives Fund, the money that we normally would be putting into there, that as a commission we talked about in our last work session, that as a group it was overwhelmingly the consensus was that because the Economic Initiatives Fund is at a balance of nearly, I think, around $800,000 currently, that the $236,000 that would be in there, we felt more comfortable in the general fund because it gives us more flexibility, and I think that's why I am supporting that decision by staff, and I think the rest of the commission felt similar. I just wanted to address those things. I think Commissioner Gillis is very passionate, and I respect her opinions, but I think it's good to also show that there is another side to some of those things. So.
Now, one last comment.
Sure.
I find it interesting that the Smart Zone, the LDFA Finance Authority, is decreasing their payments to Jim McBride while we are increasing our payments for a yearly contract. And yes, I do differ for the fact that economic development is usually taken on for the whole of Mount Pleasant proper. Bill Merdeza should be addressing all of the economic development within the city. I can see Aaron Strang being devoted to the smart zone, but they already have someone that's developing supposedly economic initiatives in the smart zone. So, and the DDA isn't paid anything other than their time and their public service. They are not paid anything to help with economic development along Mission Street. So we all know that we're all suffering from COVID, economic downturn, and I would think that would in turn be also reflective in our contract for MMDC. Just like with our contract for our employees that we didn't give a increase in salary to. Everybody has to give a little bit. I'm sure all of us are doing some different jobs and we are not being compensated with more money during this COVID pandemic. So, but thank you for allowing me to finish.
Of course. And I just wanted to, I think the LDFA contract is with those two entities is being reduced because the LDFA capture is being reduced to 0 because that plan expires in 2025. And so really it's just the rest of the funds that are in the balance that are being divvied out proportionally through the next 5 years, I think is, if that's correct. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions about the 2021 operating budget? Okay. Seeing none, I think at this time we can go for a roll call vote on the approval of the 2021 budget.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
No.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That passes 5-2.
All right, next on our agenda is item number 17, which is to consider a contract with Middle Michigan Development Corporation in the appropriate budget amendment. We did have an overview in our last work session of this, and Jim Mcbride and the chairman of the LDFA was with us to take questions. But Manager Ridley, did you have any overview of this before we talk?
Just a couple comments, Mayor, if I may. As I indicated in the cover memo, the city has had this type of contract with MMDC for general economic development services since the 1980s. And the current contract does expire at the end of this year, and we are recommending a renewal of that contract. And that renewal includes the updated description of services to be provided. And as Commissioner Gillis indicated, it would be a 3-year contract with a $1,500 increase in the payment in 2021 and then $2,000 each of the following 2 years. And I feel like I need to take some responsibility for not making sure that was more clear during our work session discussion. As I was thinking back through our discussion, I probably should have emphasized that a bit more. And so I have to take some responsibility for that oversight and not making that more clear. So I apologize to the commission for that. And as far as the services that are provided by MMDC, I agree that there's some overlap of services at times, but we've worked really hard over the years to eliminate duplications of services. And we've provided to the commission listings of services provided multiple times about what city staff provides, what MMDC provides, and what CMURC provides. And I think we've made good progress in eliminating duplications, although it's inherent that they're going to overlap with each other sometimes. So I think that this contract that's before you tonight continues to make progress in making sure some of those duplicated things that were perceived to be duplications are being taken care of. So we are recommending that you approve the contract that was in your agenda packet this evening. And as I indicated, it will require a budget amendment because at the time we put the budget together this summer, we had not had the discussions about increasing the amount from the general fund. So that extra $1,500 is not included in the budget you just approved. So if you approve this contract, we would also recommend the corresponding $1,500 budget amendment for 2021.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign a 3-year contract with MMDC for economic development services and the appropriate 2021 budget amendment.
So we have a motion, Commissioner Ronan.
I guess I'm following everyone tonight, but I'm going to second that as well. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the contract and the budget amendment in a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, I just will reiterate that I will not be supporting this evening. I would like our community members to understand that the legislature and our political people in Lansing, when in the 80s they developed these MMDCs across the state of Michigan in certain regions, this was a middleman. This was someone to take your tax dollars that were divvied up in Lansing that were going to come back to a city for economic development, and they were given to a middleman who then would disperse the funds. So as people know in the political world, a lot of times middlemen are just that. They're to make themselves a job and make themselves that you need them, essential. So unfortunately, our legislatures could not take the taxpayer dollars and reallocate it to economic development, which is a little bit of socialism on the top end, where you're taking taxpayer money and you are giving it to developments such as we did with Parcel B, which got very many dollars through MMDC and of course through the tax abatement that my fellow city commissioners approved. So it is a unfortunate way to divvy up monies that are allocated to economic development. I think Bill Merdeza, who is our director, should have the skills and the ability to do that economic dole out from our taxpayer dollars. But unfortunately, we have created these middlemen job opportunities, and that is where the money flows through. It is a middleman disbursement. And I just want to remind everyone, Jim Mcbride does do his work, and he does disperse the funds, but those are taxpayer dollars. Those are not coming from MMDC, or they're not coming from MEDC. It's just a reallocation of your taxpayer dollars to help economic development. But I am not, as everyone else is giving back, not taking raises, doing more or extra or different work, and we have not been compensated for our development of a new way of doing our jobs. I don't think at this time we should be raising anyone's salary or contribution from our taxpayer dollars. We put certain things on hold to make sure we had enough dollars, and we have already seen that they have reduced their payment to MMDC and Jim Mcbride through the LDFA. Yes, they are using that from a fund balance that they have accrued and did not use, and so they are trying to use that up, I guess. We will see in 5 years that LDFA is dissolved. I have a hard time believing that will happen, but I do not believe at this time we should be raising anyone's salary, being that we did not do that for our own employees at City Hall. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you for listening.
Commissioner Tolis has his hand up.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this either tonight, and for the following reasons. I don't think that Manager Ridley should be taking the blame on this paperwork from the contract. From Mr. Mcbride was there, explained the $1,500 increase, but said nothing, to the best of my recollection, of a $2,000 increase for the next 2 following years after that. I think with the COVID and everything else going, there should be no increase, period. Also, I agree with Commissioner Gillis. There's a duplication of process here between the different stuff. I keep hearing the same stuff from Mr. Mcbride. Oh, we did this at Masuba, and we did this, and we did that. It's all talking about existing businesses, but that's great. But what happened to the cheese factory that went to St. John's that I've mentioned numerous times before, that cost us millions of dollars in investment, plus ample employees? Now that plant has a $30 million eel plant going next to that cheese plant that's taking the byproducts from that and raising eels, which is going to spend $30 million and employ 35 plus employees there. I mean, we just keep missing this stuff out and nobody thinks anything of it. I just can't support this. I just cannot support it.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I'm going to state that I am going to support this contract for a couple of reasons. The first one is this is the first time we've given them a raise in 10 years since since the last raise we gave them. The second reason is because in the past 3 years, Mmdc has brought almost $1.2 million into Mount Pleasant, not into the surrounding area, but into Mount Pleasant. That's almost $400,000 a year that he's brought in incentives for or grants for businesses, especially during COVID. He's been very, very helpful in keeping some of these businesses alive. I get emails all the time about different grants that we can apply for or different things that we can do. He's been sending out these emails, keeping these individuals, these businesses alive, which is very important. I think that if we did not have him working for us at this point during COVID, during this lockdown, during this pandemic, we would not have businesses right now. There'd be closed doors. There would be locked and shuttered, businesses. So I have to state that for bringing him almost $400,000 a year on average, $22,000 isn't really that big deal because he's bringing in more than we're paying him.
Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I just crunched some numbers real quick, and it looked like we're getting a 16 times return on our investment. I mean, I can't, I mean, yes, they're government funds, but most people in business don't spend their time in Lansing trying to figure out what funds are available. I mean, if as a businessman, you just don't have time to do all that. Right? So having someone who does the heavy lifting and then brings that to you, I think is a useful thing. And we're getting a huge return on our investment. I don't think there's any, I'm puzzled. Could we get more? Sure. I'd like to get a better return on the investment, but the amount of money being brought in is just, it far outstrips anything else we're doing. I'm puzzled by the concern. I think we need them. I'm going to vote for it. Yeah.
I wanted to address a couple things. It was brought up that the money that MMDC receives through the state, especially maybe from the MEDC and other sources, that is tax dollars. And I think that's an important thing to focus on because, as we all know, tax dollars are spent and there isn't a lot of savings that goes on with our tax dollars, even at the local or the state level. And so what I see is MMDC doing, and I think it's fairly well outlined in the memo, is that they're in a position to advocate on our region's behalf, Isabella and Clare counties, in a position that our own economic development director, Bill Mcbride, is not even really allowed to have access to from the memo. And so that to me speaks volumes that when we have MMDC at the table on our behalf, that's an advocate in Lansing for our region. And we've seen those dollars, those real dollars in our community, especially this year, but through the term of the contract that we've had with MMDC. And so I know that there's, over my time on the commission, there's been criticisms thrown at that organization, from commissioners, but when I hear from people in the business community, it's nothing but, hey, they're helping me out. This is helping our business stay afloat. And so that to me speaks a little louder. And so I'm appreciative of the efforts that they're doing here in Mount Pleasant and in the surrounding area. And I think this contract, I think it was stipulated that this is an increase in Jim Mcbride's salary. I don't think that is to be the case. I think this is an increase to meet the cost of business with doing, the job that he does. I don't think this is necessarily, hey, Jim, here's $20,000 extra dollars for your salary this year. I don't think that's the case. So just wanted to point those things out. Commissioner Toles has his hand up.
I got one last comment to make on this. We're talking about all this money, this $400,000. It's basically taxpayers' money, state money, okay? You lost two businesses between that cheese plant and the eel plant, and okay, there was about $180,000 to $200,000 investment, which increases tax base. They're employing over 150 people between the two, which creates more revenue. So how are we getting a big return on investment? I mean, that's already state and federal money that's there. What happens to these investments right here? You got almost a $200 million investment between the two, plus the employees they're employing. And you're trying to tell me you're making a bigger investment return on your money from this? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Maybe you calculate it different, but that's something we could have had that we didn't get. We already have a fine director that's supposed to be doing this stuff from the state and everything else. What happens to these other things that are supposed to be coming here? They're not coming here. They're not coming here. They went somewhere else. And what I'm saying is that was a big investment and a big employer that we lost. So we're losing employment, we're losing tax base, and we're losing revenue. There's no doubt about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, thank you. One last comment. For the 5 years that I've been on the city commission, a lot of the discussion when we had Jim Mcbride in front of us was from former commissioners were talk about new development, because I know the phrase we've retained businesses, we touch base with businesses, and myself and Bill Mcbride go out and we touch base and we talk to them and see what they need, and that's all good and when it's said, but we need new development with new employment opportunities. And within the first year of my term, we were asking for a list of what had been happening in the previous year, what new development was coming into the city proper. And we have not seen any new development, as we all know. Yes, we have had Mitsuba make an expansion on their business and their factory floor. We also gave them a tax abatement for a portion of that. They were incurring new employees, and all that is good. But we need new development. We don't need development retention visits and paying someone to do that. And my main concern with this is everyone is giving back in COVID. We allowed, like I say again, our employees came to the table and asked us, or we asked them to continue their contract without any increases. We have been asked to do more as city commissioners. We haven't got an increase. Everybody is giving back because of the COVID pandemic, yet this one entity we are giving more money to. And it can't be both ways. We can't be asking certain pockets of people to give to us or work with us and not take a raise, and we turn around to another entity and we give them a raise because we haven't in 10 years. Well, Jim McBride's picking the pockets of a lot of different buckets of money. And you can't tell me he doesn't make a good salary. And so the increase is the major contention with me, that you are now providing him an increase where the LDFA is actually decreasing his salary for economic development within the smart zone. And I'll remind you, we have a director of economic development. There's almost a 6-figure salary with defined benefits. And so we are putting out a lot of money for economic development. So that's all I have to say on this. And I'm sure it's good to call the question.
I think Commissioner Roden.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't want to belabor the point, and I won't expand this much, but I'm absolutely supporting this. But look, I think the issue is, if new development isn't working, then why don't we turn that into a work session where we have all the principals that are doing this stuff involved, have them come and say, hey, what can we do about new development? I'm not arguing against a focus on, so I agree with what Petro and Lori are saying in terms of where the city commission needs to focus on new development. Don't get me wrong, I'm not, but I think, we've got something that's working, and maybe not totally, but I would love to have a work session. And I know it's probably inappropriate to discuss that now, but a work session on bringing all these people together and say, hey, what can we do for new development? I think if we've got different people doing different things, that's our job to sort of coordinate. But anyway.
Yeah, I do think at this time we should stick to what's in front of us. But I think what I hear from commissioners is there's probably a difference in philosophy in what the current challenges present to us. And when I look at the situation we're in, we're obviously in the middle of a pandemic. We're in a bit of an economic slowdown, the countrywide and locally here as well. And I think that we need to be investing in economic development. I think if we don't, I think we're cutting off our nose to save our face a little bit. And so with the conditions that we're currently in, I think we need to be doing everything we can to bring new development and employment and into our community. And I do contest the notion that we haven't had any new development in the city. I just don't think that's true. And I know that there has been development in the city, especially in the past year, amid a pandemic and amid an economic slowdown. So to say that we're not having anything, I think is just fairly inaccurate. But obviously we all want more, and we all want to have more jobs and increase our taxable value. So I don't see any other hands up. And so at this point, I think we're good to go to a roll call vote on the contract and the budget amendment as motioned on. Commissioner Rowan, I do see you're good. Okay. All right. Then I think we can vote.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Tolis?
No.
Commissioner Alsager?
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis?
No.
Commissioner Lalone?
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
That passes 5-2.
Okay. Next on our agenda is number 18, which is to receipt of a report on review of medical and adult use marijuana ordinances. And there is a lot, I think, to unpackage here, but at the end of the day, we it seems like staff is looking for a nod one way or another on an amendment to the recreational ordinance. Nancy, I'll leave it to you to kind of give an overview. I know Mr. Kane, Jacob Kane, is with us, who put this report together. So if Jacob would like to join us, that's fine as well. But I'll hand it over to you at this point.
Okay, I'll start with the overview. Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, the ordinance last year that was passed for adult use marijuana requires that the staff provide you a report before December of 2020. And the medical marijuana ordinance had a similar provision where we had to provide a report by December of 2019. And when we provided that report, we indicated that we would give you another one this year because at that point only, I think, one business had opened. So the report before you this evening covers both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. And it provides information on the number of applicants that were received, the number and status of ones who have been conditionally licensed, where they are in their conditional license approval, and who has opened and what violations we have or have not had for those businesses that are open. And as mentioned earlier in the agenda tonight during public comment, we did make one recommended change to the recreational marijuana or adult use marijuana ordinance. And the reason we are recommending that change is because overall, an applicant has 18 months to get to final approval of their license. And what we found is we had a provision in the ordinance that said they had to apply for a phase 2 license with the state within a certain period of time. And the state rules from the medical regulatory or the marijuana regulatory agency say that once that phase 2 application is received, that an inspection of the premises must occur within 60 days of submitting that application. So in instances where it's a new build on a vacant lot, it's just not possible to meet those timelines. So that's why we suggested that the ordinance could maybe be amended to make things a little bit clearer about how those timelines could fit together. Certainly the current applicants have worked through that and have met the requirements to apply for the phase 2 and are working through that with the regulatory agency. So there's not a pressing need to have to make that change right now. We saw it as more of a cleanup in the future to make things smoother for future applicants. But we would be, if you're interested, we could work on that ordinance amendment for you to consider next year, or we could just wait and work on that at a later point in time. But so we would like some idea from you if you want us to go ahead and start working on that, or if we should hold off. But other than that, as you saw in the report, we're recommending that no additional ordinance changes be considered at this time, because as you know, we have appeals and or lawsuits from 3 of the applicants from the recreational retailer. And so we think it's appropriate to get through those appeal and lawsuit processes before we consider any additional changes to the ordinance.
Commissioner Tolis?
Yeah, I would like to see us freeze everything right now and not do anything until we get the rest of these problems cleared up. I'd like to hear from Mr. Homer and see if he's in agreement with that or what he's thinking.
Yeah, I am. I won't comment on the pending litigation, except to say that a motion for preliminary injunction in the pure relief case was denied. There is some dispute regarding the order for submitting the record on appeal, which has not been compiled and filed yet because of that. So I don't know yet where this is going to go, either on the appeals or on the original jurisdiction lawsuit. But I agree that holding that until we see how that fleshes out is probably in order.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning. You know, we need to get the rest of the stuff cleared up before we start amending stuff and creating other problems, is the point I was trying to make. And,
yeah, I agree.
And I think that's the way we should go.
Commissioner Ronan, I saw your hand up for a second. I don't know if you wanted to chime in.
I just wanted to agree. I mean, I think, I don't, yes. I agree with Petro. I agree with,
As we indicated, you don't have to take any action on this. So if no one is real anxious to have that ordinance amendment considered early next year, we can just hold off and you don't have to take any action this evening.
I think I'm in the same boat as Commissioner Toles and Commissioner Ronan. I was coming into this discussion not sure what to expect from the commission, and I sort of had it in my back pocket to say, hey, maybe we should have a work session before we make any moves or anything like this. But if the commission is feeling that it's okay to hold off, I think that I'm comfortable with that. I know we were sort of feeling that we didn't want to make any changes to the ordinance until we sorted out some of the pending issues. And so I think staying that course, I'm comfortable with. So, any other commissioners like to say anything, or George?
Yeah, I wasn't, I agree with holding it off. Is there a timeline we're thinking of? I mean, does it have to be a year? Should we say that we'll review it quickly in 6 months, or once this litigation is done? Or is it, I mean, is there some way to, what would people, I'm just curious. I don't want to.
My recommendation, Commissioner Ronan, would be that you not set a timeline at this time, because we're not sure how quickly these pending appeals and lawsuits are going to work their way through the court system. So I think we're better to wait to see how that goes and the amount of time that the court does for scheduling before we set a timeline.
Commissioner Elsager?
I think those comments all make sense, that it's a good idea not to take action tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Right. Well, I think unless anyone else has anything else to add, I think we can move on through the agenda. Okay. Item number 20 is to consider appointments to the various city boards and commissions as recommended by the Appointments Committee. Vice Mayor Perschbacher is the chairman of the Appointments Committee, and so I will hand it over to her.
As the appointments chair, it's not easy, getting people to volunteer their time, especially during COVID, because everybody is pretty well zoomed out. And they don't want to spend a lot of time on commissions, but we have had some people that have applied, and we took and looked at all of the applications, contacted the individuals. There were some that applied for different boards than what we appointed them to, but we asked, or that we recommend them to, but we have asked them if that would be something they would consider, and they have considered that. The first appointment, or the first recommendation for appointment, would be Board of Review for Tony Kulik. We all pretty much know Tony. He's been in the community for a very long time. He has been on the Planning Commission. He's been a city commissioner. He's been a city planner. So we felt that he was definitely appropriate for this board, and he has agreed. The only other applicant we had for the Board of Review was Jim Moreno, and unfortunately we were unable to reach him for any discussion or whether or not he wanted to do that. City CMU Student Liaison Committee, we asked, we had two vacancies on here. One is for a business owner and one is for a landlord. We reached out to Rachel Aggerty, because the 4 applicants that we had were not business owners or landlords. I did reach out to another business person, Linda Weiss, who has had her application in on some various boards, but was unable to contact her. Rachel, because she is a business owner of Pleasant City Coffee, and she is a landlord, we felt that she could fill either position depending on if we had another applicant that could come in and fill the opposite. And that is for a partial term. That is until December 31st, 2021. For the Mid-Michigan Aquatic Recreation Authority. Judith Wagley, is it Wagley? Okay. She has stepped forward after Mary reached out to some of her individuals because we had no applicants for this board, and we do want to fill this as this is something that is coming up. And Judith agreed to do a term of two years so her term expires on December 31st, 2022, if she is approved. The Parks and Recs Commission, the only person that we had on there that had applied for it was Desiree Woodworth. I reached out to her and she was more than happy. She is a young mother who has been very involved in recreations as a child, as an adolescent, and she is very interested in what the Peak program does and what the Parks and Recs do in bringing activities to families and children. Her term would expire December 31st, 2023, if she is approved. We had, for the Planning Commission, we had a vacancy and we reached out to David Kingsworthy. There were 3 applicants for this: David Kingsworthy, Jim Moreno, and Linda Weiss. Jim Moreno and Linda Weiss, neither one of them returned any emails or calls. David Kingsworthy returned the email and stated that he was very much interested in this slot on the Planning Commission. He will fill a term that will expire on December 31st, 2023, if approved.
Vice Mayor, didn't you have another appointment to the Recreation Authority that you were going to recommend tonight as well?
Yes. John Zhang, as we all know, who just recently retired from the city, has applied for the Mid-Michigan Aquatic Recreational Authority. His term would expire 12/31 of 2022. I think that he would be a good fit for, number one, for knowing the city and knowing some of the things that may happen, that may come up, and because he has quite a bit of knowledge in this area.
Vice Mayor, did you say his term would be 2022? Because I think it should be 2023 because
23? Okay.
Yeah, the agreement says that we wanted to set up staggered terms. So
okay.
One of the city appointments had to be a 2-year term and one had to be a 3-year term.
Okay. Thank you for the correction, Nancy.
Yeah.
So I present these applicants, these recommendations to the various boards.
Okay.
I asked that we take those separately.
Commissioner Gillis, I'm sorry, I haven't recognized you, and Commissioner Tolles actually has his hand up, so.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner Gillis.
Yeah, I asked at the beginning of the meeting when we were discussing agenda items, if these could be taken individually, please.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a motion to take the appointments as individuals. Is there a second for?
I don't think that's proper.
Commissioner Tolles seconds that. Okay. I just want to add in discussion that this is uncharacteristic of the appointments process. Usually we appoint these as a slate. And I think Vice Mayor Perschbacher pointed out something that we all know is true, that we really value our appointments in our volunteer boards because people put in their own time to help out their city and the community. And so we really value that. And so I would recommend a no vote on this motion and recommend that we approve the slate as whole. But I'd open up the floor for discussion. I see Commissioner Gillis, you have your hand up?
Yes. Well, in past years, we have taken reappointments as a slate, but we have taken individual commissioners individuals for committee appointments. And I guess I would like to ask our attorney if that is legal, if a commissioner asks to separate the appointments to different committees, since we're doing several, and that you're not allowing that to be done. I don't think that's legal.
I don't, I'm sorry, as I understand it, there's a motion on the floor that had support. So to the extent that the motion fails, then I suspect you'd be back to the original item as presented on the agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Tolis?
Just have one quick comment here on the Board of Review. You have Tony Kulik, which I know from the city. The whole problem is he was a city employee, number one. So how do you put an independent person on the Board of Review to make decisions on property valuations when he doesn't have any real estate background? Either does Mr. Marino. And if you looked at Board of Reviews from here, Union Township, or anything else, they have people that have a little bit of real estate background. Okay, and that's the only problem I have right there. I don't know how you're going to put somebody on there that's been in, a city employee, and you're putting him there to decide on tax valuations. When number one, he's been a city employee. Number two, he's got no real estate background. Either does Mr. Marino. I don't think you have anybody qualified in that zone. That's why I'm thinking this should be split up. I mean,
okay. I just want to interject and say I think we need to direct the conversation to the motion at hand, which is to consider appointments either individually, and that individual applicants should not be part of this discussion, because I think that's not what's in front of us. Commissioner Gillis, your hand is up.
Well, when we are doing this as a whole, very much so, it is an individual person that's being put on the committee. We should all have a chance to say yes or say no to those individuals that are being put on that committee. It should not be Commissioner Vice Mayor Perschbacher, yourself, and Commissioner Alsager that gets to put us in a situation where it's an all or nothing. That is not good government. That is definitely not transparency. And I do believe that a Board of Review, the reason why we don't put a tax assessor on the Board of Review, and the reason why we don't put Marianne Cornexel on the Board of Review, is we have a community member to hear the appeals of people that are appealing their taxes. And a 20-year retired city employee of city government, a 20-year person, should probably be at least discussed individually, so that we could discuss if that would be a conflict of interest or in the best interest of our taxpayers. And there was also another thing that we had discussed. I was chair for the planning or appointments committee for 2 years, and we had discussed of not putting on a person on 2 boards when there were other people available. And you were part of the appointments committee when we put Steve Stressman on the ZBA and asked him to resign from the Parks and Rec because of the policy to bring in more community members to be part of the committees rather than one person being on 2 boards that could be filled by 2 community members. You're aware of that, Will. So being that you're on the appointments committee, I wish you would have said that during those discussions, that we try to avoid at all possibility of putting one person on 2 different boards. And we are doing that with one of these appointments. So yes, there are concerns of these appointments. We should be discussing them individually. And it's really a disservice to our community and the committee members that we're not taking them individually, because you want to do them all as a slate. There are concerns and they should be dealt with individually. That was our policy, not to put one person on 2 boards. That's why one person last year resigned from their other board. And you are aware of that. Well, everybody was aware of that other than the 2 commissioners that joined us this year. So I'm not sure why that policy or that that stipulation is now being ignored.
I think Commissioner Gillis brings up a point that's not a formal policy. It is something that we try to do. We try not to appoint two people to two boards, but we have before, and Commissioner Gillis has done that as well. So
I have not. No, that's not right.
Yeah. Yep.
Mayor, if I may interject for a second, the policy on boards and commissions does address that issue about an individual serving on two boards. And what it specifically says, I just pulled it up while you guys were talking. It says, generally, there is a desire for appointees to serve on only one board at a time. But because some boards meet infrequently, it may be possible for individuals to have appointments to multiple boards simultaneously. Also, if there are no interested or qualified candidates for a vacancy, multiple appointments of an individual can occur. So the policy does say it's the preference, but it gives two exceptions to that.
Yep. And I think both of those exceptions apply in the situation that we're talking about. Commissioner Elsager.
Excuse me. I just wanted to mention, as a member of this committee, that we did not even have enough applicants at first, and we had to think of people we knew and make some phone calls. That's probably why we have one or two that are duplicates. But I think we got some very highly skilled people. You know, the ones I was working on for the Rec Authority, I'm really pleased with both of those candidates.
Right. Go ahead, Commissioner Gillis.
Well, it's just very unfortunate that a city commission last year, we had asked someone to resign from a committee that he wanted to stay on. And then it makes us look hypocritical that we are now doing exactly the opposite this year. And I don't think it's a good way to do business as a city commissioner, and I don't think it looks transparent. And I do believe one of the appointments is a conflict of interest, which does not make the city commission look good. We need individuals that are not former government employees to be sitting on a board of review, an important committee as board of review.
Sorry, this is Mike Comier. Commissioner Gillis, are you talking about, when you use the term conflict of interest, are you talking about a legal conflict of interest?
No, more of a personal, once a government employee, always a government employee. And I don't know if he would be unbiased in hearing the appeals of community members about their tax evaluation. I don't think that could be done in an unbiased way, being that he was a city planner for 20 years and also a city commissioner.
Okay, and I'll leave that up to the discussion of the Board of Commissioners or the City Commission, of course. But as for the statutory process, there is no conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Tolis, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to call a question and get a vote on Commissioner Gillis's motion, and I seconded it.
Okay, so we have a motion to call the question. That needs a second.
I think Pete already seconded it.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he seconded the original motion?
Yes.
Yes.
The motion to call the question.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
That motion needs a second.
Oh.
I'm not, does a call a question need a second? I'm not sure.
It does, although if discussion is finished on the motion too, you could simply call for the roll call vote, I suppose.
Let's just do a roll call.
Okay.
Are you? I just want to make sure we're following as we need to. Commissioner Toles called the question. It needs a second. If I saw some other hands up, and that's why I asked for a second, because he would be cutting off debate. So if there is, and I don't want to misread the situation, if so, that motion needs a second. I see Commissioner Alsager's hand up.
If that motion needs a second, I second it.
Okay, your hand was up, and that's why I didn't want to go straight to a vote. And so if you're okay with that, and if Pete's okay with maybe withdrawing his motion, we can go to a roll call vote instead of going to 2 votes.
I think we need to vote on the motion.
Okay.
But the motion you're referring to, Commissioner Alsager, about the motion to separate and vote on each appointment separately?
Yes.
Okay. So right, I just want to make sure we're voting, not on the call the question, but we're just going to vote on the motion that was made by Commissioner Gillis and seconded by Commissioner Tolas to do the appointments individually.
Yes.
All right. Chris?
Good to go? Okay. Commissioner Alsager?
No.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone?
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan?
No.
Commissioner Tolas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
No.
And Mayor Joseph?
No.
And that motion fails 3-4.
Okay. So now we're back at square one, and we have these appointments in front of us. So I would entertain a motion to approve the appointments as a full slate. Commissioner Alsager?
I move to approve all of these appointments as a full slate.
And that needs a second. Commissioner Ronan?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion by the commission? Commissioner Tolas's hand is up.
No, that was from before again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, it's unfortunate that we can't do these individually. I had no concerns with most of them. I do have a concern with Tony Kulik being put on the Board of Review for the reasons I stated earlier, that he's been a government employee for 20 years. We usually select people with community member that do have backgrounds in real estate to fill that. If we didn't have the applications, that's what the 3 people in the appointments committee are for. They're supposed to reach out continuously to community members to try to get them to join or to put their application in. So I do not see that as a good fit for our community members that are going to be putting in appeals for their taxes. And I do have reluctancy of putting more than 1 person on 2 boards. I don't have any problems with the other appointments other than the fact that in previous years, last year, when Will was on the appointments committee, we actually asked someone to resign from one of his committees because that wasn't going to be allowed, or we were trying to incorporate as many community members to be a part of decision makings on these committees. So we're going exactly against what Ms. Ridley has just read as part of our policy of what we try to do. Also, I guess if our committee members weren't able to reach community members, it could have been on camera asking people to put on their applications, or recruiting the rest of us to ask, hey, we can't find anybody for this spot. Do you have any ideas? But that never did happen either. So I'm very disappointed that we won't be separating this like I asked at the beginning of the agenda. But unfortunately, I'm kind of used to this kind of decision making. So I will not be supporting this.
Okay. Commissioner Tolas?
Yeah, I'd like to make one more quick point. On the Board of Review, That's why you don't see the city assessor sitting on that board. The city assessor is in the room at the time people are putting their cases forward, but he's only there to clarify any clarifications that any board member needs. So that's why I'm saying it should be all neutral, third parties, and you have plenty of realtors in town here. There's 70, 80, and you could ask one to get on there. I know the township usually has one on there all the time. Mr. Golden, who owns Remax Realty, is on that one. And you've had board members on there in the city in the past that have had real estate experience. All I'm saying is you're not putting everything on a level playing field for the citizens of Mount Pleasant, somebody that's going to appeal something. You know, I want people that are on there that have experience, that make sound decisions and have real estate background. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think it's pretty sad that we're being so punishing and throwing the towel on this process. That, you know, I think Tony Kulik is a great person for that board. He's an experienced person with all things local and city government, and I think 20 years in community development and planning gives you a lot of experience. And when it comes to you know, potentially tax values and things like that. And I think that I don't know, to see anyone who reaches out to be a board member on any of our boards criticized like this is, I think, in bad taste. But Commissioner Toles?
I want to make one quick brief comment on that. I'm not criticizing Mr. Kulik. I'm friends with Mr. Kulik. When I brought the regional center up and I asked everybody to look at a quick claim deed, you know what Mr. Kulik said? I don't know anything about a quick claim deed. So how much does he know about real estate, Mayor? I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying you have to have qualified people over here that are qualified in that area. And I'm just resentful that, you know, you're using that attitude right now, that I'm criticizing somebody. I'm not criticizing him. He's worked for the city. He's done a great job, but he does not know real estate, and he admits to that he doesn't know real estate. If somebody doesn't know what a quick claim deed is, are you serious? And you're going to tell me they know what real estate?
I don't see any other hands up, so I think we can go to a vote on the slate of appointments as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Gillis?
No.
Commissioner Lalone?
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah.
Commissioner Toles?
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher? Oh wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Elsager?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Passes 5-2.
Next on our agenda is item number 21, which is a report on the city manager evaluation and to consider a wage adjustment. I'm first going to give our evaluation of the city manager, and then after that we'll go into considering any wage adjustment or bonus. The City of Mount Pleasant has a city manager council style of government. This form of government acts in many ways similar to how boards of corporations operate. In this way, the city manager is similar to a CEO who oversees the day-to-day operations and is responsible for hiring staff. The city commission, akin to a board of directors, is responsible for oversight of the city manager budget and has legislative authority for this reason. The city manager evaluation is one of the most important functions of the city commission. To assure this evaluation is thorough, accurate, and beneficial, the city commission has utilized principles and practices recommended by the International City Managers Association, or ICMA. ICMA is recognized as a leading organization that works all over the world to improve communities and local governments for their citizens. As part of this evaluation process, surveys are completed on a volunteer basis by all employees and city commissioners. This year, 50 employees completed the city manager evaluation. A majority of responses strongly agreed that they feel confident with Nancy as a leader. Nancy displays a positive attitude, is engaged in the community, treats others with respect and professionalism, gives encouragement and celebrates others' success. Over 2/3 of responses agreed Nancy shows kindness and empathy towards others, is someone people can trust, provides positive feedback when appropriate, is visible to staff and appropriately accessible to employees, gives credit to those who deserve it, sets clear expectations and communicates her desired outcomes, shows patience and self-control with others, seeks input and information from staff regularly, confronts problems and works with staff to find the best solutions, sensitive to the implications of decisions of the city and staff, holds people accountable for meeting the standards of the organization, does not punish or embarrass in front of others, lives up to the organization's expectations, is not over-controlling or over-domineering or an over-domineering person, a good listener, legitimate needs as opposed to wants of others, is fair, consistent, and predictable as a leader, actively involved with many levels of the organization, makes me feel appreciated and respected. Staff were given an opportunity to submit written responses with the prompt, provide constructive feedback for Nancy to help her to be a better leader. 18 responses were submitted, and a majority of responses had a positive attribute to offer about Nancy, and some provided examples of times that Nancy was a strong leader. Constructive feedback was offered on several ideas, and these were presented to the entire City Commission for their review. The impression from survey and written responses is Nancy Ridley is a strong leader and appreciated by her staff. The City Commission completed a survey as well, with all 7 commissioners responding. At least 2/3 of city commissioners rated Nancy's performance excellent to the following. Understands the basic principles of local service delivery in all functional areas of the city. Keeps commissioners advised of new developments in legislation, governmental practices, and regulations. Ensures effective participation of the city in the intergovernmental relations with Union Township, Central Michigan University, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, Isabella County, and the state of Michigan. Demonstrates a dedication to service to the community and its citizens. Maintains effective relationships in dealing with the news media, communicates timely and effectively to keep commissioners informed on items and events they want to and need to be aware of to effectively represent the city. Sets a professional example of good judgment by handling affairs of the public office in a fair and impartial manner. Communicates effectively with commissioners about their concerns and delegates or follows through to see that city departments implement appropriate actions. Is well prepared for meetings and provides adequate information and recommends for the City Commission to make decisions. All other survey questions, a majority of city commissioners rated Nancy's response above average. There was also a prompt for commissioners to provide written feedback. And the first was to provide an example where the city manager excelled and the traits or behaviors you observed contributed to that success. Responses from the commission focused on Nancy's work this year dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, demonstrations related to police issues of racial discrimination, the ransomware attack, and providing requested information for the commission. Commissioners were asked to provide constructive feedback where she could have improved her performance. This feedback was provided and shared with Nancy and the commission. Finally, commissioners were asked to answer if Nancy had met the standards set by the City Commission after reviewing the 2020 goals and Nancy's self-assessment. Unanimously, the commissioners answered this question, yes, and shared reasons for their assessment. After reviewing the assessment by city staff and city commissioners, I can say without hesitation, Nancy Ridley has had another successful year as the Mount Pleasant City Manager. The organization, residents, and larger community benefit strongly from Nancy Ridley's work and leadership. 2020 has been a year of many challenges. The city of Mount Pleasant has met those challenges and will continue to do so as we head into the new year. The city would not be in the place it is today without Nancy Ridley and the staff who have provided strong support to her, the commission, and the city as a whole. I think I speak for many when I say thank you, Nancy, for your hard work and dedication. We are proud and lucky to have you as our city manager. At this time, I would welcome any comments from the commission if there are any. Commissioner Alsager.
You're muted.
Being one of the two rookies on the commission, I'm not going to speak for George, but I'll have him join in if he cares to. But this has been a learning year for the two of us. And I think both of us really benefited from Nancy's guidance and appreciated her strong leadership for the commission. I surely appreciate her being our manager.
Couldn't have said it better. I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Commissioner Lalonde.
As a commissioner on their way out, I want to just say this last year has been insane, and Nancy's handled all the things really, really well. And I always appreciated her support for the commission, and especially this year, just so much going on. So just you did a great job. That's all I got to say.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I'm going to echo everything that has been said. Nancy, I truly appreciate all of the work that you've done. This has been one hell of a year. And I'm really hoping that next year is just kind of nice little, float down the river kind of year where we don't have to worry about things. But I have appreciated knowing that you were at the helm and you were steering us in the right direction.
If I may, Mayor, I would say you're right. It's been a very challenging year for everybody across our city, our country, and our nation and our world, actually. But this year went well because of the staff that we have here at the city. There's no way we could have gotten through the year we did without all of them doing what they show up to do every single day, and their resilience in dealing with all of the changes that we had to do, and their ability to adapt and change how we do services. So I appreciate your kind words, but it's really the staff who deserves all of the credit for that. They did an excellent job. But I also appreciate the support that the City Commission gave us as we had to make a lot of decisions in short amounts of time and very difficult decisions. And I always felt like you supported the decisions we made. So I appreciate that as well. So thank you.
At this time, myself and the Vice Mayor have made a recommendation about any wage adjustments or a bonus for the next year. And given the many, challenges that this past year has presented, this was not an easy decision. And it really is based off the situation that we find ourselves in and heading into next year. And so, with a year like this, I think any employee would expect to have some sort of financial reward for their work. But unfortunately, because of the questions of the financial impact of the pandemic, our tax values, commercial, residential, industrial, sort of being up in question, and also the revenue sharing that we may receive from the state of Michigan. Those uncertainties have led the city commission and the manager to make decisions this year about other staff salaries as well, including our TPOM union and our on-call firefighters, who agreed to a 1-year extension of their current contracts. And so with all that combined, me and myself and the vice mayor are recommending a no change to the city manager wage and no bonus at this time. We understand that given maybe further certainties into the next year, that we can maybe change our recommendation or take this into consideration at the end of next year. And certainly we appreciate the sacrifice that everybody is making, including Untitled. And so it was not a fun or an easy decision, but that's where our recommendation is. And so I would entertain a motion to the commission to accept that recommendation. Commissioner Alsager?
I move to accept the mayor's recommendation.
Commissioner Lalone?
You're muted.
No.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, and any discussion by the commission? Commissioner Alsager?
I agree that you and Amy had a tough decision to make. That, I know many of us gave just real good reviews of Nancy, and in a typical year that would lead to some kind of reward. But we're also thinking of her good leadership in steering the other employee groups to what's appropriate for them as well. So that's why I'm willing to accept this, and hopefully next year we can do better.
Commissioner Gillis?
I find this very unfortunate that 2 or 3 agenda items previous, we gave a raise to Mid-Michigan Development Corporation. And we felt the need to do that, and yet we are asking the manager to stay at the same rate. There was a difference of opinion last year. I was vice mayor at the time and had decided, I thought the mayor and myself had decided to give a bonus, and was kind of hijacked at that last meeting where he had decided with someone, other commissioner, and the commission as a whole decided to change that to an increase. So I know that bonus, which I was in favor of last year, is still intact because it actually is an increase in salary. So it's, she's still at that rate. I must say that with 5 years of serving public service for our community, there has been something that has come down the pike every year at us and at Nancy, be it a flood, or we're dealing with a new zoning ordinance, or we're dealing with medical marijuana. There has been extra added stress and decision making and looking for resources in all of those avenues. And this is no different. I'm almost now immune to the fact that something does happen every year that affects the community, and particularly the city staff and Nancy's plate. So I'm a little disillusioned that last year we gave her a raise instead of a bonus, and this year we're asking for nothing to be added to her salary. But I also understand that our employees have been frozen with their salary increases and have given back. Those are just my sentiments. I also want to thank Nancy for always supporting the commission, always being there to answer any of my questions. And I appreciate her more than she knows. And so I value her, and I would hope that next year will be a better year. Thank you.
Commissioner Toles?
Yes, I think Manager Ridley's done a great job. She's always gave me what I requested, and sometimes we, have disagreements, but that always happens on a few things. But I feel that we've frozen the rest of the employees, but I think we have taken into consideration that once we negotiate the other employees, that later on down the line, we consider an adjustment, just like with the rest of the employees. Thanks for your work.
All right. I don't see any other hands up except for Director Loria, who's in the attendees. And if I don't know if Paul's trying to talk at this time or if he wants to make an announcement. I'm not sure, but if
I moved him in case you wanted to recognize him, Mayor.
Sure. Director Loria, if you like, if you had
Yeah, I'm not going to be disrespectful to this elected body, because I respect each and every one of you, and I'm not trying to say change your mind or anything like that. But I will say that at some point, and I understand the previous statements about other employees, you have to look at history there. Specifically when there's a bonuses given versus wage increase in the way of a percentage that hasn't occurred, or not as often as a union group. So I understand that comparison, but I also want you to know that 2020 has been difficult, as you all know, and we added a whole bunch of social justice issues, not only nationally, but locally. And Nancy was there 100% with me, this department, this city, every step of the way. She's been that way with this pandemic, not since the middle of it, not just recently, but from the very beginning. I think that people think this city runs itself, and it doesn't. The logistics, the employees, the residents, the visitors, all that takes management and staying on top of it. And in my opinion, she deserves probably what the city can't pay, but she deserves something. And again, that's my opinion. I respect your guys' decision. I disagree with it. But I would hope that you would consider sometime recently down the road something, because it's just hard for me to swallow. I'm very fortunate working for the city. I know it. And I think all our employees know it. But that doesn't mean that that there shouldn't be some level of financial appreciation for someone who works as hard as Nancy Ridley. Thanks.
I take those words from Director Loria to heart, and I think actually we all agree that Nancy and a lot of our staff deserve more money than we probably can afford. But it's not an easy decision. But that's kind of where we landed. We think that it's fair to the rest of our employees, and I don't think that sentiment is lost on the commission that Nancy and everyone else deserves financial compensation that is appropriate for the challenges that they meet every day in their jobs. And I know Major Ridley is one of the hardest workers I've ever known in my life. So that's kind of where we're at. So without any other hands up, or Commissioner Gillis, you're good? Okay. I think we can go to a vote on the recommendation at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan?
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis?
No.
Commissioner Elsager?
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis?
No.
Commissioner Lalone?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Passes 5-2.
Okay. All right. With that, our next agenda item is consider a motion to cancel our second meeting in December. And Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I so motion.
Okay. And Commissioner Elsager.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? I think the silence speaks for itself. I think we can go to a vote on canceling our December 21st meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Tolis?
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager?
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone?
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan?
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Passes 6-1.
Okay. Now I'm just wondering what George wants to talk about.
George isn't even going to be here.
Just trying to keep things consistent, you know?
There we go.
All right. With that, we typically authorize Marianne Cornexel to approve the issuance of payrolls and warrants from tomorrow through January 11th, 2021. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I motion to authorize the financial director, Mary Ann Cornexel, to approve the issuance of payrolls and warrants from December 15th, 2020 to January 11th, 2021.
Okay. And Commissioner Tolis.
Support.
All right. And any discussion?
Mayor, I would just remind the commission that we will provide a complete listing of all of the checks that are issued during that time period to the commission at your first meeting in January, so that you are aware of those.
Thank you, Major Ridley. With no hands up, I think we can vote on the motion as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan?
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis?
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager?
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Okay. Next is announcements on city-related issues and new business. Commissioner Elsager.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Lalonde for her good service over the past 3 years. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, I wanted to say how much I enjoyed the paintings on the windows downtown, and our community member, Mr. Blem, I think was the one that did a majority of those. And if there were other artists, I don't know you by name, but I do want to recognize your artistic ability and the brightness and holiday cheer that you've brought down to downtown. Thank you very much. I also want to thank all of our community members that have pulled through a horrendous 2020. And all of us that have fed the hungry and have supported teachers and all of our retail employers who have stocked our shelves, and our city staff who worked endlessly on how to figure out how to do virtual home work or work from home, and how to manage that. We have all taken on new responsibilities and a new way of doing our jobs. And we still continue to provide not only to our community, but to our families. I want to thank the people who've stepped up for childcare, where our students are home and the parents still have to go to work. And those people who took up that extra ability to help those people and those families. We have all been through a bearable 2020, and I know next year is going to get better. I know if we all do the right thing and do what's best to get this pandemic under control, I beg of our community members to continue to wear masks and continue to try to enjoy the holidays within your pods, as they're called now, the people that you always hang out with. It's kind of like we're whales now. We're all into our individual pods. We will save people by doing this. I have said all along, wear a mask today, save a life tomorrow. I know COVID has touched all of us, and I know we are dealing not only with our own issues, but as a commission, we're trying to deal with city issues. So I know every one of us has done our very best, along with Commissioner Lalonde, who's leaving us. But I know you're still going to enjoy these meetings, so I know you're still going to be tuning in. But do what you can for our community. Find something that you can give, because the person that you're giving to, the recipient, will remember how to give back. Sometimes you have to show people how to give so that they can give back. So I appreciate every one of you. Thank you, community members, for doing what you can to keep us alive and well. And have a wonderful Christmas and have a wonderful New Year, and do a toast to 2021 that we all can get together soon, enjoy football stadiums and enjoy homecomings and graduations, and maybe even get back to chambers again, so where we can see each other and touch each other again. So please do well for the end of the year and look forward to 2021, and the best be with all of you. Thank you.
Commissioner Toles.
Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Lalonde for her service on the City Commission. I would like to also, to all the commissioners, staff, and all the citizens of Mount Pleasant, wish them all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I'd also like to thank Commissioner Lalonde for hanging in there and coming to the last meeting. We really appreciate that. I look forward to, Christmas cards in the future of you and Bug. I really appreciate that too. But I would like to remind our citizens, our residents of Mount Pleasant, that there are people out there in need. There are places that you can give. If you have extra, it can always be used by someone who does not have. Let's wear a mask. Let's social distance. Let's keep each other safe. And I hope everyone has a happy holiday.
Commissioner Malone.
You all for your well wishes. I won't lie, I've been looking forward to this day for a while. So want to thank everybody I worked with. Everybody at the city I worked with was amazing, just top notch. And all my commissioners that I worked with, just thank you all. And it was a learning experience that I can take and apply to other areas of my life, which is good. And as a citizen, now I know how things work or don't work sometimes. So anyway, thank you all. Everyone have happy holidays and stay safe.
I like to really echo a lot of the same things to everybody. You know, we're in a tough pandemic right now, and especially with the holidays, I think it hits hard because we're used to getting together with friends and family. But I would urge people to stay socially distant and wear your mask, and maybe forgo some of your celebrations this year, so next year they can even be even better. I think the light is at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine being distributed. And I guess I'd just like to thank the community for just all their support of the city, the businesses, and everything going on. I'd like to thank the commission, although sometimes I think it might look like we don't get along. We do. We all like each other, and these are not always easy issues, and we're passionate people. And I'd like to thank the staff for all their hard work. They're what makes everything go. And it's been a very tough year, and I'm just glad that we got through it. And then with Commissioner Lalone leaving, I just wanted to say a few words about Commissioner Lalone. The first time I met Commissioner Lalone was when we were both running for the city commission. And I think the relationship between candidates for elected office sometimes can be one that's maybe a little bit awkward or maybe filled with tension. And I just want to say that the first time I met Commissioner Lalone was actually at City Hall, and it was for a community planning event. And I just want to say that I think we were both very nice to each other, and she was very nice to me, even though maybe we had reasons to, we were competing in an election, and that we eventually both won. And that impression always stuck with me. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Kristen, and I think the commission as a whole feels the same way. And I just wrote some few words, so I'll say those. The commission would like to thank Kristen for her service to the Mount Pleasant City Commission. Kristen has been a thoughtful commissioner who leads with empathy and conviction. She came to the commission dedicated to improve our community, to take care of the Chippewa River, and support small businesses. Kristen has always been generous to city staff, and on several occasions, she has hand-delivered Robert's donuts and pizza to city employees to show her appreciation. In 2019, when we were going through a polar vortex, Kristen delivered donuts to staff in the morning so that they knew she was thinking of them. Kristen is a commissioner and a person who wants to hear people out and reflects on the information in front of her to make the tough decisions that are in front of us. Before coming to the commission, Kristen was a member of the Material Recovery Facility Board that oversees recycling and refuse in Isabella County. Her commitment to sustainability and taking care of the environment has been reflected in her work as a city commissioner. She was a member of the Mount Pleasant Diversity Group, and the protection of civil rights for all has been a cornerstone for leadership. Kristen was also an employee at our local library and helped many in Mount Pleasant utilize the important resources they need. Today, Kristen is still a librarian, and in fact is a medical librarian who works in hospitals in the area, including Midland and Gratiot counties. In the midst of a deadly pandemic, Kristen's work is undoubtedly helping doctors save lives, contributing to the health of many, and the eventual success of our medical professionals fighting disease on the front lines. Your service and care will be missed as you move on to the next chapter of your life, but we are assured that your commitment to community and helping others, the world is better from your work here and now and into the future. We will miss your presence and cat photos, but we are happy for you and best of luck on your next adventure.
And we have a gift for you that will be delivered on behalf of the city on one of these upcoming days.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Of course. Commissioner Toles, I see your hand is up, but I don't know if that's from before.
Before again, I have a bad habit of doing that.
That's all right. I should be used to it, but I don't. If anyone doesn't have any more announcements, okay. At this time, I'll open up the public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. And if you're here with us through Zoom, you can hit the participants button at the bottom and the raise hand in the bottom right. And I wish that you state your name and your address to address the commission. I see Michael Comorn is wishes to make comment.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
First of all, happy holidays to everyone also. That was kind of nice at the end. It's always nice when someone's retiring or leaving. You can see everyone's appreciation working together. It's not an easy task. I realize that it's been hard for everybody. And I hear some themes of things that are probably challenging all cities throughout the state, some of the financial and management and the health concerns and whatnot. But with all that being said, you know, I don't want to harp too much on this issue with the licensing for my clients and the recreational license. But it strikes me as very difficult to reconcile the following. And I would suggest that maybe for the next agenda, this is something that's considered or maybe even a vote. But, you know, there was a published article that was, you know, everyone's on record speaking about back in, it was September 8th, reported on by Michaela Coffey, published on, no, I'm sorry, September 10th, from the point in time when the recreational licenses were issued. And what I read here and what I see on record at the time was that by Mr. Kane stating it to the reporter, really the goal of this process was to find the applicants that are going to be most likely to operate in compliance with the law and the ordinances. Not everyone approved of the committee's decision, however. And then, of course, what's really tragic is that Mr. Kane goes on to say that it wasn't within the committee's discretion to award licenses to someone strictly on the basis of their current operation. As for those companies fear the future, Kane indicates this is common for many businesses. And I know the city attorney, Mr. Homer, had indicated that the one lawsuit had been denied, but just for purposes of trying to minimize additional costs, and I would ask the consideration, because I know that the licensee that had filed the lawsuit was not in the same position as my clients, and they would not then be subject to this very specific statement by in state law, which says municipalities may not adopt an ordinance that prohibits a marijuana grower, a marijuana processor, and a marijuana retailer from operations at a location shared with a marijuana facility operating pursuant to the MMFLA. And this is from the statute itself. What's also remarkable is that in this particular article, Mr. Kane has stated, is quoted as saying that the set opening dates for Loom and House of Fire have not been announced. The businesses still need to complete all of the steps necessary for licensing and operation on the state level. If the businesses fail to complete these steps, conditional authorization will be awarded to the next ranked business. If I'm not mistaken, and if the local ordinance says they have 30 days from November 5th when they were given, they would have 30 days to submit to the state. And anyone that did not means that they did not comply with the existing ordinance as it stands right now. And it wasn't repealed. There was no vote on that today. But isn't it strange that the whole premise of the ordinance and getting businesses up and running, and all of a sudden there's this, it's okay to delay, and the one, the ordinance that was utilized in the decision making is now all of a sudden just, I know you're not going to vote on it, but I would say, the whole decision was made, and I know you guys did not make the decision. I'm asking just out loud what makes sense. I mean, the ordinance you were in charge of writing, and then the principle of the merit-based, et cetera, those decisions were not your decision. But clearly there was an intention to give licenses to people that were operating this. I mean, this is why people, you can't reconcile these two things. You can't be saying on one hand, that we wanted the businesses to get open and running immediately, and we have an ordinance in effect to do that. And if they don't meet these requirements, then it goes to the next person. And then while that is on record, there's suggestions that you repeal the ordinance that would require that to do so. It's patently unfair. It's changing the rules after the fact. And there's clearly a simple path to rectify this, not just to be honorable in the intention of what the ordinance prescribes, but to make it be fair. I mean, there's a comment that made that, some businesses are going to fail, some are going to make it. But when you inhibit the ability of the business to compete with the other ones, the other businesses, and we've got 8 million people in the state of Michigan, the market for the recreational is all those that are over the age of 21. There's approximately 250,000 patients in the state of Michigan. That number is going down. And that is what you've left by regulation, by rule, not by fair competition, not by organic economics, not by laissez-faire. This is a regulated restriction that really puts them at a disadvantage. The idea that they have a chance to compete is patently not fair. So I know that, and I'll stop, and I appreciate you listening to me. I do, and I wish everyone well for the holidays. But I just ask you to please look in your heart and try to consider this family's been in business locally, supporting medical marijuana patients for literally like 2 years and no complaints. And as I stated, and maybe it's a discussion we have with the city attorney of the significance of this state law that is the basis of our lawsuit. And it is not, and as I said, the one that lost was not in the same position that we are. They did not have not been qualified and given a medical license. Anyways, thank you very much for your time. Merry Christmas to everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camone. I don't see any other hands up for public comment. Nancy, did we have any emailed comments to the commission?
Just a second, I got to get to the right screen.
Sure.
No, there are no emailed comments that came in.
Okay. Well, I think at this point, I will close the public comment section on city-related issues. And at this point, we don't have anything else left on the agenda. So at 10:07, I will adjourn this meeting. Everyone have a happy holidays, stay healthy, and Kristen, we'll see you around town.
Happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.